We are attempting to build a next generation cloud, learning from big boys out there like Amazon. I don't know if Terramark qualifies as being a big cloud, but Rackspace, anything else, and try to take the best things from them and build something new. Another important part is to use minimal people to actually support the cloud. One of the things in Terramark's cloud is there's probably 1 or 2 people for every 100 or 1,000 VMs. That's just not sustainable. We also don't want to be designed small. We don't want to say, oh, we can only run 100,000 VMs or 200,000 VMs. We want the architecture to be fully expandable. And a very strange one to most developers is we talk a lot about quality of service, which means we are not so much interested in how fast your network can go. We want it to go how fast you pay for. And another one that I'm very tight on is running an imported guest. Being able to take a guest from VMware, which is one of the popular ones, or any other hypervisor, and run it unchanged, rather than install new drivers or anything else, just run the VM. And another important thing is that if you don't like our UI, you can write your own. And I believe we're in talks with CloudStack that you can talk to the Verizon Cloud through CloudStack and it just works. One of the benefits of being part of buying Terramark is that they came with a couple of data centers around the world. Here are the ones we're trying to be in relatively soon. I think we won't have them all by September 15th, but by the end of the year, we plan to have guests running in all these data centers. Here's a rather complex diagram. Hopefully it's not too hard to see from where you are. We're showing the internet's that sort of small circle up there, and we have multiple connections, which is part of the reliability that we hope this cloud never goes down. It is designed to be redundant. We have 4 heavy-duty core switches, which are connected. Each smaller server box is connected to each one of the 4 switches, so there's a 4-way redundancy. And the little boxes in the bottom are not that little in that they contain 64 servers and 64 2-terabyte drives. I think that's on the next slide. So we're currently talking about 2 managed switches coming in with 4 10 gig Ethernet connections from the internet, going to the 4 core switches, each one having 4 connections, and then it's 10 gig to each of the C micro chassis. And the core switches are limited to, I think, 144 servers connected to them, and they're supposedly able to get close to line rate, even at 10 gig between each one of those. As I mentioned, we have 64 2-terabyte SSDs in each C micro chassis. And we split that up into 56 Xen servers, 8 storage servers, and 8 level 2 switches. Unlike a lot of designs, we don't care what type of networking protocol you're running. We give you level 2 connectivity between the guests. And it's also sort of different in that we don't let 2 guests talk together on one server. We require, they're each on their own VLAN. and we require them to go through a central router and come back, even if you're talking on the same server. And to make sure it's fully scalable, we don't have anything outside that's running the software. We run all our software as Xen guests on the box. Another thing that if some of you have used the Amazon Cloud, you find, well, you have VGA console, sort of. Serial access is less than stellar. We want to fix that. So you can interact right now with the VGA console. Serial is still in progress, but you can interact with the BIOS, you can interact with GUB as your guest is booting up. We don't hide that from you at all. Oh, cruising along too fast. Well, you know, since I went to, I don't know how much this applies, but as part of the import of other guests, we're looking to do fairly advanced VMware guest support. The part that Conrad talked about is actually only the first patch and hopefully a series of patches. So it won't all make 4 or 5, but I'm going to talk some more about it, and that's Linux really doesn't care so much what your guest looks like, but Windows does. I don't know how many of you have dealt with Windows under Xen, but it can be very picky. If you have newer guests that are written under VMware, they have newer devices. Like, well, PV-SCSI is a very misnamed thing in VMware world, because it's not anything like PV-SCSI that's being talked about in Xen. It looks more like a traditional controller. And there are some older devices that are not supported in Qemu, like the LSI 1068, which you can configure VMware guests. And there are also VMware special networking devices called VMXNet 3 and older versions. And to make your guest run completely cleanly, this also needs to be supported in CBIOS, which I don't think there's a lot of people that worry about it in here. Another thing that I found is that VMware really likes lots of PCI buses. There's, I think I counted it, was it 24 PCI buses are built by default, which is, and then they put 2 devices on them. Go figure. Now, while I've talked a lot about VMware, we're not excluding any other hypervisor technology. We're going to be looking into how to import guests from Hyper-V or KVM, anything that people might want to use. I guess I'm cruising through the talk. Well, here's some more details. I won't go into it because unless you really care, I can go over more details. I'll go to this one and talk more about quality of service, because we actually configure the number of IOPS you get on a disk, the number of network packets you can send on a NIC, you know, how many CPUs you get, how fast they go, and we never overcommit a guest, a Xen hypervisor. So this has made some interesting engineering or, you know, realizations, because a lot of people say, well, if I make a 8 CPU guest, Can I put another 8 CPU guest on this one machine with 8 CPUs? And the answer is no, you only get one. And the last part there is that VMware does support changing the MIO, and that is going to be in 4.5, sorry. It's a preview for 4.6, but one of the nicest things is what's known as a VMware mouse. I don't know how many of you have used Spice, I'm sure it's the same, and VNC, but when you go through enough networks, the mouse just is lousy to use. So that's one of the things we are fixing. And this is one of the areas I'm actively working on, and that is how well do various OSs, like Linux, work when they find more than one hypervisor virtualization technique at once. If you see, currently now you can have Xen and Meridian, and I'm adding VMware. And do they say, ooh, I'm on VMware? Do they say, ooh, I'm on Xen? They say, I'm on Hyper-V? Or does different parts do different things? So that's all I had plans. I'm going to open up for questions. So I've cruised real fast. Yes?
I just have a question. We have seen some presentation yesterday and today also. Do we have access to these presentations?
Yes.
Yes.
So they will all be uploaded on the usual Xen manager channel on Slutz. You can get to it from the website.
Yes.
And, the recordings will also go on YouTube. On the channel. When that's done.
Thank you.
Yes?
Send out
Oh.
an email to everybody.
Please, if you can put that in.
Links to it.
Yeah, you didn't talk too much about the storage architecture. Is it all local access to those SSDs, or are you looking at some network storage?
Turns out in this particular box, that's an area I should have talked, it's all network access storage. The internals of the C Micro is that they have a 3-dimensional fabric connecting all the server blades together. And then there are connections through the network internally to the disks. So it's not, the distance between any server card and its disk is the same as any other.
Is that over iSCSI, or?
It's actually over, it's AOE over Ethernet. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's not a common protocol. Nope. We got some back here. You.
Yeah, quick question. For the quality of service, you said you can control the CPU resources and also the network traffic and also the disk speed.
Yes.
Read and write. How do you decide those values for each virtual machines?
It's up to the customer. You actually pick it from the, when you create, or actually when you go to start a VM, you can change what you currently have. You say, I want this many IOPS. And we flow that all the way through down to Xen.
Do you do anything for networking if you're bringing a VM from the enterprise? It has an enterprise IP address in there.
Yes.
You have some kind of switch that runs in your infrastructure that will route packets back into the enterprise it came from, or?
Not currently. I can put on my other hat and say the Cloud Switch had that product and nobody had sufficient interest for us to keep it maintained. Yes.
Yeah, can you say what performance loss you think you get by not overcommitting, or utilization loss, and what kind of applications people are going to use this cloud for?
I'm not sure it's easily quantifiable and how much, capacity isn't being used. in our servers. I'm sure we have some metrics, but part of it is we're looking, like every year, the cost of actually running a server is going, for new servers going down. So it isn't so critical that you actually use every cycle you can. So I hope that answers some of your question.
Is there specific applications you think that your cloud is more likely to be used for?
We're trying to target for everything we can. I know some of the beta testing we've been doing, people said, I really like the fact it runs the way you said it did, not faster. You don't get bumps or skew between the VMs. They seem to all run together nicely. Let's lose this side.
How much automation do you expect to achieve in resource provisioning or auto-scaling?
Right now, I believe it's all fully automated. There's no human involved in where the guests land.
But
That's it.
If your application actually demands more resources at some point, and that might be because of certain input values to this application, how does the cloud know how many CPUs to add and memory and so on?
We're not doing an automated change of your guest. It's up to you to monitor your guest and say, ooh, I don't have enough CPUs configured. Let me shut it down right now. I mean, we'd like to hot plug CPUs, but that's for the future. You shut down, say, I want more CPU, and then you start up again. So I think we had a question over here.
Can you talk a little bit more about why you force things to go out L3 instead of staying at L2 for
No, we
the guest?
we stay L2 all the way.
I thought you said you routed each VM back to the core, and they don't talk on the same vSwitch.
We send them over L2 over VLANs outside of Xen, and then goes to the level 2 switch, which may in fact come back to the same server, but that helps with the quality of service in that your network speed's the same whether you're talking on the same server or one actually, chassis away, because your packets will get there up with the same latency almost.
You say you're concerned about quality of service, so you're guaranteeing that if I ask for like n CPU cycles per second, I'll get n?
Yes.
Can I get 2n? Is that
We're-
acceptable?
That is currently acceptable. One of the things we found is that the Intel chips we use are harder to qualify on how fast they go. They they run one thread faster than 4. However, if you're running 4 threads, then they all run, 1/4 of 1. So it's one of those, since we can't constrain the CPUs, you may get more than you bought, but you're going to get what we say you're going to get, at least. Yes.
Are you planning to support live migration? Is that something you're looking at?
Yes. We're not quite supporting live migration, but very soon, and that is a good point. We plan to never shut down the running chassis to upgrade, and we fully plan to upgrade our software fairly regularly. I think we're looking at like a 3-month cycle for the next release, and we're coming out this month. Yes, we're back a ways. We're only on Xen 4.3, but we have 4.4 in testing, and we fully plan to deploy that before the end of the year. So unlike a lot of traditional things, we don't plan to pick a version and stick with it. We want to keep moving forward. Yeah.
Can customers put restrictions on where their processes are running, and how do they know that they haven't been moved to a different context?
Currently, the only restriction we have is in data centers. You can say, I only want to run in this data center. We don't have those knobs yet. I think it is in plan, but since we are starting this all from scratch, there's a lot of work to get to the features we want, not to mention the features that would be good. Back there.
One of your slides mentioned in Qemu you had the LSI, SAS, 1078, 1068.
Yes.
So is that also an option for Qemu, or is that something you guys are going to actually?
Well, I attempted to upstream the first version, and they basically said, why do we need another controller? So I don't hold much hope of actually successfully upstreaming it. I'll try to.
You have a good answer to that question, right?
What?
You have a good answer to the question why you need it.
Yeah.
You need it for VMware compatibility.
But, you know, being only one voice, I'll keep trying to push up versions of the code that maybe are a little cleaner, but I won't hold any hope that actually makes it there.
So, but I mean, you mentioned like 3 different types of chipsets. There's some bias logic, the 5.3C something, and then the SAS.
Right.
Do you have actually code for all 3 of them?
Yes, it turns out the 3, so I can get it down to it. Is that it? No.
No.
One too far? All right.
Can't be too far. I'd be wrong.
It turns out all 3 are based on the same chipset. There it is. The actual same chipset from LSI. And internally in Linux, they're known as the MPT SCSI controller. The actual interface is the same from the kernel. They're just different models. It's different packaging, different placement.
Different capabilities.
Yeah. Anything else?
So with VMware support, is the plan to support things running as if they're on VMware for their entire lifetime, or to support them running as VMware long enough to switch over to Xen DB? Or
We want to make it whatever the customer wants. We will run it USVM, as VMware, and I expect slowly.
right.
But that's sort of their choice.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is this up and running in production with customers right now?
We have it in what I consider production. I believe September 15th is the target date to actually send the first bill. And knowing how these things go, I suspect the first bill's not going to be right. But we fully plan to be,
And that's going to be in all those data centers that you talked about?
yes.
All those data centers
Not-
fully populated?
Well, they won't be fully populated, and I don't think we're going to be online on the September 15th date. But all those data centers have the chassis, and they all have the network connectivity. The hardware's all there. It's the software that's lagging behind in this case to actually run successfully that many data centers and not trip over something we didn't expect.
Yeah, I think you said your cloud infrastructure software is not based on OpenStack or
No.
Cloud Stack or anything like that.
We're writing it all from scratch.
Are you planning for something like Amazon EC2, EC3 compatibility, or?
I guess in some sense, it's just in that, yes, you can program to both, but I think we also are offering a companion product, which I'm not really involved in, called the cloud storage, which is supposed to be the S3 compatible with Amazon. So you're not
Down to the API level?
down to the API level. So you're not required to keep your data on our local expensive disks. If you have something you want to archive or otherwise move in and out on demand. I'm not 100% sure what the decision was, but we were saying we knew these issues with what the software we knew. I can't say that we knew every open source part of like OpenStack or libvirt or all those pieces, and they all seem to have issues that we had identified. And so we're trying to, as I said, start from scratch, build it cleanly so it worked well.
What's it written in?
Most of the orchestration's written in Java.
So what was your reason for using Xen?
Yes, well, partly we didn't think we needed to write a hypervisor from scratch. And Xen fit the bill of being the most secure that we could find and the most flexible. In that right now I'm not aware of any other hypervisor that supports PV mode, for instance. And I think the isolation's better than KVM. So
you're looking at things like disaggregation and stuff like that at some point as well, or is that too far out?
I think it's too far out to even think about right now. I guess that's it. And I'm ending real early, but
Well, we have 15 more minutes for questions.
hopefully I handled it.